I listen. It is a rainy, pouring down
Yeah. Sorry, but
Tuesday,
yeah.
Tuesday
Yeah.
afternoon here in Richmond area. And for sure, I'm very grateful that one, you decided to still join us today.
Yeah.
I don't see any rain on you. It sounds like you might have stayed home today. You didn't go outside. You're like,
I stepped out a little bit and I got a little water on me. I said, let me get back in this house real quick. Got a
as my
little
grandma
droplet
would
on me.
say, sugar melt in the rain. So I ain't trying to try it. All right, man.
Exactly.
Okay,
Exactly.
all right, Gary T. Taylor. T for don't step outside these doors, Taylor.
Nah.
All right, look.
Lucky I want to sleep all day. For real. I had work to do.
This is the perfect weather to get that sleep in because it feels. I don't know why that works. I'm sure there's some study on it, but this is the weather that feels the best when you're like ready to sleep.
Yes, indeed. That's what we say in the country out here. So hey, when it start raining like that and storming, go ahead, lay your head down, lay down.
I know. Listen, my family's from South Carolina, so country down backwoods. They would say like if it's storming, the Lord's at work. Is that the same?
Yes.
We got the same kin? Okay. All right.
Yeah. Lord's at work. Don't you move, sit down, don't touch nothing. Cut everything off. I still do it to this day. Everything.
We have scientifically proven that nothing will happen if your fan is on. Well, we got to cut the fan off. Like grandma's hot. It's hot. Anyway, today I'm talking with Gary T. Taylor, a writer of a wonderful book, amongst other things. Let me get that in frame. We're going to talk about the book. We're going to talk about your journey. We're going to talk about your profession, all that good stuff. Maybe even get into your basketball choices and how we need to work on that and pray on that. We got a lot of things we can unpack today. So what I've been trying to do lately is instead of reading your bio, I want you to unpack and tell your bio the way you would want to. So what I've noticed is that every bio is written kind of in the same format. Let me tell you about my professional experience and all such stuff. But you tell it the way you want to tell it, and then we'll just kind of unpack it as we go along in the conversation. So tell the people who you are.
I appreciate that, Demetrius. Yeah, thank you for having me. And Resist Booksellers, y'all do amazing work in the community of Petersburg, and just supporting a Black-owned bookstore just an awesome blessing to me as well. But if you don't know, my name is Gary Trey Taylor, licensed clinical social worker here in the state of Virginia. I'm from Caroline County, Virginia. And for those who are familiar or might not be aware, if you know about Kings Dominion, area above Kings Dominion is Caroline County, Virginia. Just a young Black boy from, I like to say, the back rows in the cornfields. That's what I grew up on. Right in front of my house was a cornfield, you know what I'm saying? And so
you're from the country.
Yeah. I'd have moved on up a little bit where I'm at in my neighborhood now, but I'm like itching to get back to like that somberness and peacefulness of just the big backyard and stuff like that. But yeah, man, I'm from Caroline, man. I graduated from VCU, my degree in psychology, got my master's of social work in George Mason University. Very, very passionate about, helping people, mental health, especially mental health in the Black community. I love basketball, I love coffee, cars, sneakers, things like that. I'm a dad, I'm a husband, also a deacon and leader of the young adult ministry at my church. And just having a community, man, and just love doing what I, want to do. Also a podcaster as well, the G Taylor Show. You can catch it on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, all your digital streaming platforms. And lastly, assistant professor at Virginia State University. That's how I went down the street to go chop it up with Demetrius, man. And so, I've been in the field of mental health for like probably going on 12 years at this point, and just been doing in various different settings, and was in private practice for a while, and just very passionate about the education and knowledge base of mental health for us in the Black community, but especially as Black men. And so we'll get into it today to talk about like the book and how that came about and all the things that go into it for real.
Yeah, no, I appreciate all of what you're doing. We're going to talk about that, why we're so proud of the work you're doing. But I want to start off just like you started off the book, with just getting right to it. So there's some things in there that resonated with me personally, Black man to Black man. There's some things that resonated because of what I see in the community. And so I think there'll be some things that we talk about that will be enlightening, be helpful. I'll try to protect the innocent. I'll use myself as the example of some of these questions. But for sure, I think there are men out there, women out there, people in our community who can just benefit from some of the things that you have experienced, some of the things that you're working on. And I think for sure, some of the stuff that will come out of this conversation. So I want to start with something that I've seen a lot in Black men, myself included. The more I get more self-aware, it's more and more of like, it's very obvious, is that we're on this kind of like treadmill. And in the book, you talked about it as one of these days, one of those days. Yeah. Like, I'm just having one of those days, nothing to it. It's all normal. And you just keep on this treadmill of having one of those days every day. And so I want to talk about, your experience with that concept and how that manifested in very early on in the book, but also how you're seeing that manifest in your practice when you're talking to specifically Black men in this case, and how we're not dealing with it and how it's showing up.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the things when I started therapy myself on my therapy journey in 2019, I really was able to unpack different like sayings and things that we have adopted over time, just as commonplace that we say all the time. Like, we were talking about earlier with the rain and, things like that we've been getting from our elders, our grandparents, our mom and dad, and just unpacking like, okay, this is one of those days, right? And one of those days can mean a couple of different things, right? It could be a low day, a sad day, a day I'm angry, I'm feeling like blah, I just don't feel, adequate of myself, or I may not know how to I don't have nothing to put a name to it. I just one of those days, right? And I had to challenge myself to change the language behind that, right? And speak to what's actually going on versus just saying those things. And I have found myself, when you have conversations with people, man, you just throw out these sayings. Oh, I'm just trying to get like you, or just another day, another dollar. Just trying to make it. You know what I'm saying? And it's like just trying to make it, but are you making it, right? Or what's behind that? And some of it we just say unconsciously. So I had to challenge myself with that saying and some other sayings to say, okay, what does that mean, Trey? Like, what? My nickname is Trey. Like, what does that mean? What are you talking about, right? And is it something else that's underlying that's there, or are we just having just conversation, just word salad in a sense, and not being intentional with our speech and what we're saying? And so when I was in private practice, because I left private practice last September, because I've been teaching and doing clinical supervision for new social workers and just balancing life every day, fatherhood, marriage, things like that. I just couldn't continue on providing therapy spaces. But when I used to work with men on that, and we identified like, hey, what does that mean specifically, or why are you saying that? And sometimes the guys are like, I don't even know, but it's just I've made it so normal, that that's just what it is. And we couldn't speak specifically to what really was going on. And so I think sometimes as us as men, especially Black men, we don't have that emotional vocabulary to know that there's more feelings and emotions than just happiness and sadness, right? Like, and we can go into this. I bring out this feelings wheel for my guys. It's a big wheel with all these emotions and feelings, and you can point to that. Okay, this is what you're feeling today. This is what I'm feeling today, and kind of just developing that emotional vocabulary and that language to speak to what we're really going through. And I had to go through it, and I started teaching guys that as well.
So, as you're talking to these guys, do you think? And I'm trying to figure out how to ask this question, but do you think that they knew that they were on this treadmill, or they were always having these one of these days kind of moments all the time, or they just didn't know how to deal with it, so they just accepted it as normal? Like, what would you say is like a theme in how the men were dealing with that?
I tend to lean on, okay, they didn't have the vocabulary, right? So we didn't know how to name it, put a name to a thing, right? And then secondly, there's also some of that, okay, well, we don't want to put a name to a thing, because if we put a name to a thing, that means that we have to acknowledge it and accept it, right?
Right.
Some of that old school thinking. And so, and then third, I think the last piece of it is we just was on this treadmill, and it became commonplace, it became normal. And so that's why I wrote the book, because in a more of a simple, practical aspect, because the things that I talk about in the book are stuff that we deal with every day, right? And we talk about every day, but we've normalized it to just, oh, that's just life. It is what it is, and you move forward. But these everyday things, they do affect us, and they affect us differently, person to person, situation to situation. And so I wanted to kind of call that out and say, let's have a conversation about the things that we've normalized, over these past years, or past centuries, or whatever, from generation to generation, and speak to why, what they do to us, and then why we feel this way about it, and so we can get better clarification on what's really bothering us.
So you said something, and it was a very simple sentence, but I think it works for this. So you said, and I'm not going to say it exactly, I'm sure, but you said people didn't understand or couldn't perceive that you were possibly thinking of not being here anymore, maybe taking your life, because you never showed them. They only know what you showed them.
Yeah.
And so one of the things that, just to kind of tie it to this, is that I'm having these days, but I'm shouldering it. And I'm always handling it, or whatever the men say. Right. And it's almost like that's the expectation. That's the perception I'm sharing. So I don't want to break that. I'm always the man in my family that's got it together, even though I don't.
Right.
I'm dying on the inside, but I want to give this perception that I got it.
Yeah, exactly.
How do you break that? Like, because if in your case, you were just like, you were the dad. I mean, yeah, you're a father, you're a husband, you're doing all this other stuff, family man, and you got it together. That's what we're expected to do, right? We're expected to shoulder this. But then if I'm also not showing them, then people will always think you got it. Like, how do you pull those pieces apart as a therapist? Like, I'm struggling even explaining it, like how to pull that pieces apart.
It's complex, right? It's very complex and convoluted. I think it's layered. And I always start with that. It's layered, man. This stuff that we deal with, we shoulder up as Black men, is layered. It's not just as simple as, oh, go see a therapist. Or it's not just as simple as, oh, well, you need to talk to somebody. Or it's not just as simple as, well, why you don't tell me why you don't talk to me about your emotions and feelings. It's not just that it's simple. Like, I always say, like, with the situation in the book and talking about that situation, I should have been in therapy years prior, before that.
Right.
Yeah, no lie. I should have been in therapy a long time before that, but I didn't even in that moment. I still didn't go to therapy until like 2019. In that moment, that was around like somewhere between 2016, 2018, something like that. So I still didn't go until years later, and a lot of that is vulnerability, right? And then how can the mental health professional, the one that's always talking about mental health, be the one that's really contemplating, running his car off the road or something like that, or contemplate leaving this earth? And albeit I didn't have like the intention behind it, those thoughts had loomed in somehow, right? And so I was in a dark place. And so navigating that and knowing I had a family, a daughter, people that I had to take care of, I had to be here for, and for my spiritual side and my beliefs around that, like I knew that this was, something that was I needed to address, that was bigger than what I was trying to perceive and try to keep this macho lens on. And ultimately, asking for help means that I'm weak. Asking for help means that I can't do all these things that I'm supposed to be doing. But in reality, what I look at it as, and I tell guys this all the time, because it's like, I don't like, if I ask for help, that means I'm weak, or to ask for help means that I am dealing with this. And it's like, you're stronger. There's more strength in asking for help, than it is not. You know what I'm saying? Even though you might try to hold up this thing, right? And you're always a go-to person, but if you're always a go-to person, then who is going to help refill your cup? Because you're always pouring out. So who's refilling your cup? And I call that the Big Mama effect. if you had a big mama, great grandmama, like, you know, some of us have been blessed with, like, big mama was the matriarch of the family. She held everybody together. She took care of everybody. She did her thing. But who poured into big mama? Right? Who helped her? Right? And when we start talking about nervous breakdowns and things like that, that's nothing but those mental health stuff coming up because of the weight of the family and the world and things she had to go through and endure and stuff like that. So I say, like, man, it's a process of taking accountability, not just for addressing your own stuff, but taking accountability to know that you need some help and you need to ask for help and you need to figure that out, and being okay with that, like being okay with taking accountability to say, I need help. I need to go talk to somebody. I need to, even not outside the therapy piece. Maybe I'm shouldering so much because I'm the only one that gets things done, take care of things, but now it's time that I need to step back because this is consuming me. I need to learn how to delegate tasks, right? And ask for help in these situations. Like, that's what I'm practicing this year, is like more so not just trying to just knock things out, do it on my own, because I know I can do it and knock it out, and I can do it in a way that looks right for me. But that's also taking more time and putting more on my plate. So how can I learn how to ask for help in a way that delegates tasks so that can leave me some time for myself and my family and things that we got going on? Hope that answered the question.
No, it answered the question. I got more questions now, but
gotcha.
Look, I want to point this in there. This is my business training jumping in.
Yeah.
What he just talked about. There's something called a RACI chart, RACI. If you've never been to any business class or any kind of project improvement, this is something that's going to help you.
Yeah.
Just because you are accountable for doing a task, I'm accountable for making sure my household is financially secure. My household, everything's fixed around here. Right. That doesn't make me responsible for the task.
Yeah.
So what I do now is I am responsible for the yard. Let me give you an example. I mean, I'm accountable for the yard. Right. Grass get high, that's on me.
Right.
But I hire a guy.
Yeah.
So he is responsible.
Yes.
For doing cutting the grass. Right. If your wife is accountable for cooking, she can farm that out.
Yep.
And make that somebody else's responsibility. Now at the end, if it doesn't get done, it still comes back on me for the grass. If my man don't show up, I guess I gotta go out there and cut it.
Right.
But I think that'll help a lot of us too, because we think because I'm accountable for everything, I have to do everything.
Yes.
And that's not true. That's not true.
Yes. And an act that is always we have to be the ones all doing it all the time.
Oh yeah.
You start to realize that is not really enough time in the day to do every single task like that. Yeah.
Yep. And also you got to be ready to say, I have too much. And I got to let it go. So there's something you said, and this is not even in my question, so I'm glad you bring this stuff up. You said that there are men who will sometimes say, if I ask for help, I'll be seen as weak, or I am weak. I'm not sure which part you said.
Seen as weak, or
seen as weak, right?
Yeah.
So where do you think that stems from? Is it somebody saying that to them in their experience, and then they're just accepting that? Is it a perception of how people feel, but it's not like actually supported or corroborated? Like where are they getting that from?
I think it's a perception and also experience of like childhood, of how we've been raised, depending on which men, like the men we've been around, and what they kind of have laid out or acknowledged as, strong and being strong and being a man and taking care of business, things like that. Like, what you crying for, boy, or you ain't got nothing to cry about, get up and brush yourself off, types like that. So it's a bit of that, experience that we grew up with versus, and then also along some of that perception that continues to feed it. Right. So have I perceived that is, if I show weakness, it's going to come off as, or if I say anything like that, it's going to come off as me being weak or showing weakness. So I have to perpetuate this image or perpetuate that I am strong to be seen as a man, especially for us as black men. I'm not saying it probably that definitely happens in other cultures and ethnicities, but for us, and I think that's where it comes from. Like, and I use the example sometimes with my pops. Like me and my pops have this conversation. Like my dad is a throwback type of guy. Like, you know what I'm saying? So, and we had conversations around just like, I tell him, like, you never showed me nothing but the emotion side of just the happiness and sadness, or happiness and anger. So I only knew those two things, right? You know what I'm saying? And so, but my thing about it was, it wasn't too much of the bravado piece, but it was more so the provider protector piece, trying to be all of these things that I saw that, you know, in the sense my dad, my grandfathers were, and trying to step up to that image. But the vulnerability piece, it was limited. Like I probably seen my pops cry maybe like once or twice ever. Now he's a lot more vulnerable with me as I've gotten older, and we've had conversations, and there's been grief and loss and things like that. But before that, no, it wasn't that much, right? And never seen my grandfathers cry at all. They was just, you know, old school brothers that, you know what I'm saying, about their business, you know. And so those elements, I think, that wasn't there. Some of that is survival tactics, because when I have conversations in the community with that population, you know, they talk to me. I asked them, I said, you know, well, why did you do it this way? And they tell me, they was like, you know, we went in a mode of survival, right? We needed to protect our house and provide for our house. And so we didn't have the time or opportunity to engage in that way, because it would have been dangerous. It could have been life or death. And that perspective has stuck with me a long time as I do my work, because it goes generation to generation. So it's like, you could remove some of that blame that you try to put there because of that generation and what that time was happening for those individuals.
So when you said that to your father about what you saw, what you remembered, do you think that was freeing to him? Like in some sort of way, he doesn't have to be that old school model anymore. You're actually looking for something that's different, more connecting, you know, and being, you know, allowing him the freedom to show those things where maybe in the past he wasn't.
It's a good question. I'm not sure. He's still
He's still a little rough around edges.
He's still a little rough, man. He's still a little secretive. But,
so Dad, if you're listening, you can hug him. You can hug him.
Yeah, hug your pops, man. You know, but he's I have, you know, he has, you know, softened up over the years. I would say in the last couple of years. Around that, and it very well could have, like, for me to have that conversation and tell him, but then also, like, I think we've had some moments too, due to the grief and loss, where we had to have those hard talks, and I had to tell him, like, look, man, it's okay, right? It's okay to grieve. It's okay to let go. It's okay to work through this. Like, you know, it's okay to be it's okay to not be okay. And I think those I'm an older adult, I'm a dad now too, conversation has also helped, because I guess maybe he's seen that he's done what he could to get me to this level, things like that. And so he, you know, maybe he could just let his guard down too some, you know what I'm saying? Because he only knew what he knew during that time. But,
and he couldn't, and he wasn't allowed, you know, to do that back then. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So very well so. Could be, for sure.
Mm-hmm. All right. So we're going to go ahead and set the stage real quick. I am a Christian.
Yep.
Sounds like you are.
Yes, sir.
All right. And so just because we talking about religion here, we're not talking negative about it. You know, we're talking critically. But there was something you said in your book, and it's the only thing I'm going to read out of the book. I thought it was important.
Yep.
It's on page 9, real early. You said, even as Christians, we think we can pray it all away.
Yes.
All our problems or struggles, God will indeed take these things away. But it's up to us to be able to put ourselves in a position for him to do so. You can't just stay in the same place that you were in before. Along with those endless prayers, we have to be willing to get our hands dirty. In other words, we have to do the work. So listen, I am a Christian, but I am in community I work with, and I talk to people who are not Christian. And one of the things that they have a little bit of a tiff with the the Christian faith sometimes is that we don't really support, as a whole, in their minds, true mental health
Right.
work. They think, bring it to God, God will take it away. And they've heard and interacted with people who are in the faith who will say and regurgitate that type of thinking.
Yeah.
But in your book, you're not shying away from either, and you're saying that they're both connected.
Absolutely.
So kind of work us through how you got there and how Christianity, or any faith for that matter, good faith, can work with mental health and preparing ourselves for making some growth and finding peace.
Yeah, absolutely. It's not a topic that I've never shied away from. In my first book, You Good Fam, I talked about it. I talked about how, faith is important and how we need to go beyond just, praying things away. But I think I've been in the opportunity and been blessed to be under at a church and under a bishop that also gets it around faith and mental health, has been outspoken in the pulpit around like the need for mental health and also praying and faith and things like that. And so I think that being in a church home like that under a leadership of a bishop that believes in that, right, is also helpful for me to discuss and talk about these things in a manner that speaks to that. We're not so much calling out and critiquing, but we're just having that conversation where I think these two things can blend. You can go to church, be a Christian, devout Christian, pray to God, and also have a therapist, right? Because do we not believe that the God didn't create therapists to help people and provide therapy with that skill set? Do you not think that God didn't create and give those individuals the gifts to be able to not heal, but also listen and to help people work through these certain situations? You don't think that's a gift that God didn't give, right? And so I think that as we talk about it, and I've been, most of my work in the community starts at the church and starts with doing psychoeducation around mental health and the Bible and the church, and just working through that. And so I think that the pieces is looking at how we can combine together, because if your mental health is off, right, then your spiritual health might be off, right? You might not be talking to God as much or praying as much, and vice versa. That might be the same for your spiritual health going into your mental health, even down to your physical health. I'm a firm believer that the spiritual, physical, and mental work hand in hand, and we have to be able to cultivate those different levels of ourselves so that we can be healthy holistically. And we also look at spirituality and religion, regardless of whatever religion you are in or denomination, as a protective factor, right? So if you have a part of a religious organization, that is a protective factor because you have community there, right? And so we should be able to help get people the services that they need and resources they need while at the church, and then also going beyond. We can pray for them right there. They might come up to the altar call. We might have prayer for them. They need to go through, they need to talk to God, but also they need to go see a therapist, because whatever they're dealing with, depression, anxiety, or whatever trauma-based stuff, we need to go talk that out with a licensed, trained clinician to work through that. And then there are Christian therapists, like, what I'm saying? So I never shied away from talking about God in my sessions if clients want to talk about it, right? I'm not going to bring it up initially, but they know that once they come to me, that's what I'm about, right? And so it's I think it's an easy blend, but for some reason we like to separate it. And I think it also just goes into the fact of too, like, people want to know explicitly what that means to give it to God. And if you give it to God, that's a daily thing, right? We die daily. We do to our flesh each and every day. We have to feed our spiritual man each and every day. That's a daily task.
Right.
So for the negative experiences or whatever experience that we've had in life, if we're not constantly giving that away to God or trusting with that, we're struggling trying to work through that. You can still pray about that, but it might need for a licensed clinician, somebody that's non-biased, that has some tools that can help work through that and unlock that, so you can still work on letting it go. I
love it. I'm putting that on a t-shirt, all of that. It's gonna be a lot of words, but it's going on the front, the back, side. Yeah, because I think it's helpful. I think I think there's some spots especially in our faith, which is a little outdated, right? And we just need to refresh the definitions, refresh the approach. It's not taking away from anything that we're trying to teach. It's just making sure that we're healthier and better as we progress and grow. It's not taking away from anything that's in the word, especially when we think about like God using different people in your life to help you. This is just one of those people who's helping you to grow.
Is one of those people, and one of the running jokes that I have, I got from me and my wife talked about is like, I wear glasses, right? I could have prayed. I pray all the time. give me, hey, I won't need these glasses no more, right? But obviously, he gave the gift for that optometrist to be an optometry to help me work with my eyes, and that's a issue that I have to carry with me, going forward in my life, and I have to wear these things to see. You know what I'm saying? And so. But that doesn't denounce. Does that say that God doesn't answer prayers? No. This is just what I have to work with.
That's right. I mean, I got to put on lotion too. I guess I shouldn't have the lotion. Shouldn't have the. I mean, how far down the slope are we going to go here?
Well, right? I mean, yeah. If I want to be healthy medically, and physically, if I want to work through those things, and keep myself, I gotta eat well. I gotta
eat well. I gotta
take care of myself. Yeah.
And I think that just comes through more conversation, more learning, more prayer, and in community too, right? It's not like a judgment call on anybody who believed that, because there's things that we have changed and evolved with over time. So I love that part. So I wanted to bring that up because I saw that, other than, your love of other things, family, music, sports, it seems like your faith is very integral to who you are and also to your journey that was detailed in the book. So we want to make sure we highlight that as well. So if you're looking through the book, for those who have not picked it up, make sure you read it, go through it. But there's some passages in there. There's some little nuggets, places you can go, and I think get some inspiration. It's not a book of trying to convert you to anything. No, right. There's a lot. This is not going to, you're not going to leave this and then join the Mount Moriah Baptist Church anywhere. Right. The goal is to show you what it looks like to move towards a peaceful and refreshing life. So you talked about your dad earlier in this conversation, and I actually have this question. I had two men on here. I had Dad and Grandpa L that I wanted to unpack a little bit. They seem present in your life, supportive in the times that they were inside of your life and through your childhood. How would you say their presence, their support, their behavior, their experiences with you have molded your personal life and maybe even how you approach the people inside of the work that you're doing?
Yeah. So my dad and Grandpa L, right? So Grandpa L is actually my mom's dad. And then my dad is, of course, my dad. And I think, man, these guys really shape who I am as a person and my approach to life, in a sense. Like my pops, man, like he instilled in me like support and providing for, family, but he also instilled in me too, I think, so many nuggets, man, like so many things he used to say to me that I use sometimes in therapy with men or just talking to men. That I was like, man, I don't want to hear that when I'm a teenager or whatever, but I still use it to this day. Like certain things, like one of the things that he taught me was just like to live life, right? Like do what you need to do, work hard, but make sure you live in life. And if you ever get a chance to know my pops, I always tell my friends, all my friends love my dad, but he's always him. Like you always gonna get a genuine, the same person each and every time you meet with him. And that taught me authenticity and just being my genuine self. And he's not afraid to be himself. And so I had to, I embraced that, right? Not afraid to be myself and who I am and what I stand for. That's my pops through and through. But like he used to tell me like certain things too. Like we, one of the things I always use is like we had a big yard and we raking and cutting grass. And so he was like bagging up the grass and raking up the grass. So I'm raking the grass, working extra hard. And he was like, boy, if you got a tool as the rake, let the rake the grass or not you rake the grass. It's like, what are you talking about, man? He's like, use the rake to rake and you not working yourself so hard to do it. And that just taught me really how to utilize tools to deal with the problems that you got going on instead of just overexerting yourself.
Yeah.
Certain things that, like, you know, maybe we working on a car, we doing something around the house, working on stuff. He was like, you know what I'm saying, yo, work on it. You can't get it, walk away from it. I was like, man, well, I ain't got time to walk away from that stuff, man. I gotta get this thing done. No, he was like, no, walk away from it, get your time yourself, you know, get yourself together and come back to it. It's gonna come off, the part will come off, something's gonna get fixed. You're gonna get what you need to get out of that situation. That knowledge base has not failed me once.
Not once.
Not once. I promise you, I'll be trying to put something together, working on something. I can't get it. I can't fix it. I'm getting frustrated. I'm getting upset. And it just teaches the practice of being intentional, of removing yourself from a situation real quick, getting yourself together, coming back and work just like that. It has never failed me once. It's the wildest thing to me. And so he's like, that's what he's been to me, you know what I'm saying, in those moments, man. And just, you know, really, and our relationship has went up and down. We have ups and downs after the divorce, during the divorce, you know, stuff like that. Me and him go at it at times, but, you know, I think it's made us, you know, closer. And I appreciate him for that. Grandpa L was just kind of like, you know, we say like the OG, man. He was my OG, and I would just sit under him for days and hours down in the country. You know, my grandma's house was across the field. and when my parents was at work, I go down there and sit with them, you know, and sit with him all day and just listen to him, right? And just have conversations about life and just whatever, and just what things look like. And he had lost his leg, not like after not so long. He was on dialysis for so long because he got sick, and he was still moving around the house and still doing stuff.
Right.
And it's just, you know, I think the wisdom that I picked up, I sat under, you know, these older adults most of my childhood, you know what I'm saying? So, and just picking up wisdom and just their presence and learning about life and learning how to maneuver through life. And that's where I think that with him, man, you know, as a young child, still trying to soak it up or trying to learn, but I enjoyed his presence so much and just being underneath of him, and just whatever. It was just random topics, be anything about anything, you know. So just taught me just about life and what things should be and what they should look like.
And then you said Grandpa T looked like the greatest football player ever to lace him up. That's what I heard.
Yeah, he looked like LT.
Looked like the real LT.
Yeah.
So no, this is, you know, it was a weird romp. I was listening to your story as I was reading the book, and then I'm getting to know all these, you know, different people, from grandmas to you know, your parents, and then also your grandparents as well. And so I get to, and the way I read, just to give you context, the way I read is I read and I'm trying to visualize, and I get connected to characters. And in your book, even though it's not a fictional tale, I got connected to you. I got connected to your marriage. And I got, this is a confession time, I got to the chapter that started with divorce. And I said, no.
I said
no.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
I was like, no. And I had to get in it, and I had to read. I was like, oh, whew.
Right.
So tell your wife, I was rooting for y'all. I didn't even know y'all. I was rooting for y'all.
I appreciate
that y'all didn't get divorced.
Yeah,
divorce was another thing, right? And you mentioned this as one of the challenges of your growth and your maturity.
Yeah.
And this is the divorce of your parents. So can you talk a little bit about how that impacted you and how you think that, you know, what you learned from it and all that good stuff?
Yeah, man. Divorce was probably one of the biggest challenges in my life, outside of the grief and loss and things that I was dealing with that time stretch. And you know, it was also challenging for my friends in my community. Like, you know, I had my partners come up to me and it was like, man, yeah, man, like we was there for you and support you, man. But you know, they were our mom and dad too. You know what I'm saying? So they love my dad, they love my mom. My homeboys always asking them about them. You know what I'm saying? And so I didn't realize that impact till later when guys would come back and tell me, and I'm like, dang, like that's tough, because they was like, you know, my house was the place that everybody come, and you know, my mom and dad was known, and it's just seeing that impact. But I, you know, and shout out to my guy, my co-author Saint Yvonne, man, who was the one who, you know, wrote this book out for me. and we just collaborated and put those things together because he really took that life. The things that you were talking about, that's all Saint. That's all Saint. He's a phenomenal writer, full-time writer, man. You got to check him out. Even have him on the podcast if you can. But he would ask me questions about that, and he would just put it and infuse it into the book. And one of the moments in there where I was just talking about just visualizing when walking through the kitchen again, where it was like a very kind of 70s vintage vibe now, and it didn't feel like home anymore. It didn't feel like the same no more. And my dad wasn't downstairs in the basement anymore, in the garage, and having to go through that. And now like, a lot of people, I tell people that I was going through that in undergraduate freshman year, like left the house, went down to Fayetteville first year, and they were going, having their stuff back and forth. And ultimately they didn't really separate or divorce until my time when I came back up to VCU. And that was like sophomore, junior year. So all first time college student, going away, coming back in college, trying to work, navigate my relationships, trying to finish my degree, but I'm at home is not the same no more.
Right.
And so that really affected, I think, my relationships going forward. That was probably the period where I probably should have been in therapy, because what had happened was that I took all that pain, that hurt, that whatever I wasn't dealing with. And that's where you see some of those music lyrics, the scriptures go back and forth throughout the chapter. But then I put it all into just, work. So I was just working, overworking, going to get the degrees, doing crazy stuff with degrees as far as my hours, putting that. I said, well, if I'm not going to deal with it, I'm going to put it somewhere productive. And that's what I did. And I still to this day still have stuff that I deal with in reference to them, like managing the households, managing two separate grandparents is not in the same house, still dealing with stuff that I felt like, they've put me through in that situation. And I dealt with it in therapy, and I deal with it with them. I have conversations with them about it. They know everything. Nothing what I talked about in the book is nothing that we never talked about face to face, or I ain't had no conversation with them about. Yeah. But when they put a strain on what I thought marriage should look like going forward, right? And so what I didn't want for my marriage, and how I wanted to approach my marriage. So at the drop of the dime, where I seen some stuff that was creeping up, that was starting to affect my marriage, beeline straight to therapy. Let me get myself together, right? Or I'm responding in a way that looks like my parents did. Let me address that real quick. I'm still a work in progress, right? But I don't want it to be the situation that causes my marriage to fail. So it was a period where I thought I wasn't gonna get married and didn't want to. And then I found my wife, and then the rest is history. We were 8 years in at this point. So it's just like, but it affects you. It does affect you. And I think one of my conversations I was having was with my guy, Sean P, on the Sean P experience. We were talking about it, like the effects of, dealing with divorce at a young age versus dealing with an adult age, and how it shows up differently for each other. And so, yeah, it's been a journey, but it's a process. But probably you caught me in my 20s, late 20s around this topic, be a whole different type of
different type of language,
different type of energy, all type of stuff. I'm not getting
Deacon Taylor at that point. Like,
yeah, not at all. Not at all.
Look, we're all different. We all have grown.
We grow.
Thank God for grace and mercy.
Amen. Amen. Look, somebody. Bless the Lord.
I don't know how we got through, but we did, and we're here now, and we're having like an adult, mature conversation about a time where we probably weren't as mature. There was no therapy back then. Not that it wasn't existing, that we didn't go to it. Could have benefited from it. Could have unpacked some stuff, but did not. I can tell you that there's probably some therapy going on, but not the positive version. It was
right.
And we'll leave it at that. It's G-rated show.
Yeah, I always tell my parents, I was like, y'all, I'm y'all child, so I have the elements of y'all in one.
Yeah,
it's not always the best at times.
No. My mom was a quiet assassin. My dad was a social animal. Like, it's
similar.
You mix all them two together. Yeah. I can be myself and be good. I can cut you a look and be sharp. I grew up in New York, so my tongue is already sharp because you got to survive.
Right.
My dad can. My dad was. He was a swooner, right? He was a singer. He was personable, infectious.
Yeah.
You take a little bit of that and go to college. Man, come on, man. With bad intentions, it's not a good. It's not a good.
it get real sticky.
It get real sticky if that was, and then if you're pursuing that, like you said, with like a lot of stuff going on, right? You're looking for another outlet instead of dealing with what you already have going on. You're actually going out and just planting it someplace else, and that could be troublesome, right?
Exactly.
There's two things that I want to talk about, and then we'll wrap up. I have a fast 5 question set for you that you got to answer before we get out of here. But you talked a lot about grief in the book and how that molded you. And I want to take it a slightly different way. For those who have not read the book, read the book. It's a very easy, very good, informative read. But as far as grief, you talked a little bit where you spent a bunch of deaths, close relationships, a lot of people in a relatively short period of time.
Yeah.
And as someone who's trying to be a friend to someone, a family member to someone who is experiencing that, and I want to take not your experiencing, but the people that's surrounding you.
Yeah.
How well do you think most people in our community, and you can, men, women, doesn't matter, are prepared to handle death? But then also, what are some things that we as the family, the circle, can do to better support people in this time?
Man, I you know what, man, I think that we don't do grief and loss really good. We don't. And that's because we've learned over time what we think it should be, and we're not really putting ourselves in those who are grieving shoes to see what their needs are. And so I really think that, and I think this is a growing process, and then also understanding what grief and loss looks like outside of just death too. That's why I talk about it. And so grieving the loss of relationships, career paths, goals, things like that, that comes up and that can mix in. And I think that also we think that grief should have a timetable or a time limit on it, and we should be getting over it. Now grief is ongoing, it continues. Now, if it gets to a point where somebody gets stuck, and we talk about depression, or it's inhibiting functioning of daily activity of daily life, then yes, we need to intervene with some interventions, get that person some conversation, some help, talk to a therapist, talk to a grief counselor, something like that, right? But we put limits on it, and putting limits on it doesn't help that person to grieve properly, go through the proper stages, take the time to address what they need to address, and allow that person to grieve in their own way. We also sometimes think that, okay, I grieve this way with this person, so let me share with you how I grieve. And or the whole conversation of, well, everything's going to be all right, God's got them, things like that. And
that's my personal favorite, by the way.
Yeah, God's got them. And it's like, all right, I hear you, but I don't want to hear that in this moment. And maybe. And so, depending on which population you're working with in that situation. And so I think that we need to, one of the things I tell people, man, is that when I was going through my grief and loss, like my support system was amazing. I had drilled them for years about mental health. And so they, for some reason, somehow my friends, my wife, they were able to give me space and opportunities to grieve, check in on me, ask me what I need. And so if I wanted to get out and do something, they'll allow me to do that. They'll take me there. Let's go ahead. Let's go over here. Let's do this. Let's do that. If I needed time and space to myself, they would give that to me. They were equipped, and it was wild to watch in the moment and then kind of reflect back on how equipped they was to doing that. But that was perfect for me because it allowed me to work through the grief in my own timeline and experience. And so I say to that people and say, I still don't know all I need to know about grief, but I know enough to know to say, I'm going to be whatever that person needs from me in that moment. So if you need me to sit on the phone with you all night and chop it up, cool, I'm gonna do that. If you need me to sit with you in silence and just sit with you, I'm gonna do that. If you need a hug or if you need a dap, if you need to get out and do something, I'm gonna do that. You let me know what you need in that moment. And if you can't let me know, that's okay too. I'll just be here until you are, we can figure out what is needed. But a lot of times people, because they don't know what to say in that moment, they feel they have to say something. And it comes out. They just keep talking and it comes out wow. And I remember a time where like my grandma, my mom's mom was like, she was pretty much on her deathbed, and like, one of the guys there was just like, he's part of the church, but he was just kept talking, and I was like, I don't want to talk right now. This is what I mean. I talk for a living, but I don't want to talk right now. I only want to have conversations about my book. I don't want to talk about nothing of that because the book got brought up. My person is dying. And so, but because we don't know what to say, sometimes we feel like we have to say something because that's how we've been taught. And most of the times it's better not to say nothing at all, but just be there as a presence.
Yeah.
So just a little bit more of a education and learning around that, instead of more so removing yourself because you're uncomfortable and getting, putting yourself in the other person's shoes to figure out what they want and need versus your needs in that moment.
I like that a lot, and I like that you were prepping them, like giving them all this training and stuff. Because I think we all can benefit from it, and non-professionals, people that are not grief counselors, not therapists, not anything.
Yeah,
it's just, especially when you get to kind of like where you and I are in stage of life. I mean,
right.
Grandparents when you're in 40 are typically 80 plus.
Yeah.
Your parents are 60 plus, somewhere in there. And so the end of life is natural. It's coming.
Right.
And so, especially if you got a big family, you could be on this roller coaster of emotions because you're seeing some people that you have grown up with, lived with, like you said, sat underneath them for so long that now they're starting to go away. Right. And back to what we talked about at the beginning, I could just be having one of those days where I'm thinking about grandpa. I'm thinking about grandma.
Yeah.
The way it shows up for me, and maybe it shows up for others, it's the small little silly stuff, right? I can know that grandpa like watermelon annihilators. Yeah. And I go to the store and I see watermelon annihilators. Haven't seen them in forever. So it's not like something I see every day, but then it comes up. Right. It's those little things. And like I said, now I'm having one of those days because it's compounded with my career, with relationship and all that stuff. And then when somebody say what's wrong, well, you come back with, I'm just having one of those days.
One of those days.
I love how you pieced all this together. You didn't make it a self-help book. It wasn't like, here's the 5 steps on how you do this and that. But I think just kind of walking through your journey and piecing stuff together, it's been a really good ride. But before we go, I want to talk about some of the work that you're doing to try to change how social work therapists are looked at, especially because you're looking at maybe getting more males, Black males, some notoriety, involved, inclusion. Talk about that work. Because we talk about Black doctors, like the primary cares, we talk about Black teachers, but it seems like there may be another deficit that you're working on that could be really beneficial here.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I'm very passionate about getting and recruiting and retention of more Black male social workers, because I think we make up, Black male therapists make up like 4% or maybe less than that in the space. And so it's not a lot of us in this space, and Black men are suffering and need somebody to look like us, that can talk like us, walk like us, and work through the things that we need to work through. And I'm very passionate about it because it's a space that can be a career that's lucrative, right? You know what I'm saying? But you also can help people in a way that's unique and creative to you. And so I when I got out of school, like I looked at like my cohort was probably like maybe 1 out of 4 Black men graduated in my program. That's the same for a lot of my colleagues, right? Like they just like 1 out of 4, 1 out of 5 in that spaces. And that's like maybe 200, 300 students. And so I ended up getting an opportunity to teach at Virginia State as assistant professor at the social work department. and is looking at, okay, how can I impact those individuals to, hey, show them that there's a way to do this in a way that's, you can help and care for others. And then I do that, and also around the speaking engagements and things like that, looking and talking to people in the space, because it is a white dominated space, about how we can engage Black men into the field of social work and therapy, but and working on how we can recruit and retain. And I think it's a great career path to do so. And I think there's opportunities for innovation to make that happen. And so we need each other, right? We can create community for each other, and do something that's beneficial for each other. I'm not saying all the time like that Black man needs to work with that Black man. It might not work out sometimes, it might be different,
right.
But it does feel good, to look across the screen or across the room in the chair and see somebody that looks like you that can speak that thing to you. So I got a lot of things working on that side, whether it's in the academic space or whether it's, doing speaking and facilitation around it, and trying to figure out how we recruit. And so hopefully when I continue on, I'm working on my doctorate in the summertime, figuring out, additional avenues in order to get that to happen, because we just need it. And I want to pass the baton. I want to be able to say, all right, about 10, 15 years, here y'all go, take it. I'm gonna go ahead and sit on this side and be in my coffee shop chilling while y'all running it, because I know I'm limited, and I know I got ideas. I got some cool ideas, but that's somebody can build off of that and do something greater. You know what I'm saying? But if the next generation ain't there to do that, it's like, well, what are we gonna do? It's going to sit by the wayside. So
that's right. Mm-hmm. All right. So the way we're going to close out today, before we get to our last comments, is I'm gonna hit you with 4 pairs of things. So
okay,
each pair you have to pick one. No, I can see both sides thing. You're gonna have to pick one. It don't sound like that'll be a problem for you. So here we go. You like music? Nas or Biggie?
Biggie.
Cars, American or foreign?
Foreign.
All right. You're a deacon, so you read the book. Psalms or Proverbs?
Proverbs.
Your basketball head, LeBron or Kobe?
LeBron.
I was gonna say Bubba Chuck there, but I feel like you're the pick.
You already know. Know.
I was like, this dude is from Virginia, because not everybody knows Bubba Chuck.
Yeah, Virginia through and through. That's what it is, man.
All right. So last question before we get to your handles, where to find the book and all that good stuff. What's the last great book you have read?
The last great book that I have read. I really enjoyed Will Smith's book.
Wow. The biography.
Yeah, the biography. I enjoy the backdrop and the background of people and learning why, hence why I'm a therapist in the field, learning why they do what they do.
Right.
Or
right.
why you made that decision. I really enjoyed that Will Smith biography. I really did. I think it's a good read for guys, because he channels and goes through. I encourage folks to do the audio book, because he reads it himself, and then he has like different music components in it and all these kind of visionary things to it. It's an experience, but just learning kind of why he reacted the way he reacted to certain things. And I'm looking and watching from a therapist's brain, like, oh, that's why you do that. That's why you did that movie. Oh, that's why you reacted this way. Oh, okay. So that was one. I really enjoyed that book. Yeah.
Nah, that's a good pick. I mean, a lot of people like that book. They echo the same thing that you said about him reading it. Same thing with Barack Obama, President Obama's last book. He read it as well.
He did. I haven't got through that yet.
It's a long book. It's going to. It's a long book, bro. It's a long one. I read it, but I had a specific reason why I read it. Right. It's a long one, but he read his and he cursed, and people are like, "What chapter is that on?" Because you're now the president of the United States. For him, it's not. I don't think he's a cursor. Like, he might be, I don't think he curses a lot. It doesn't feel like he does. Right. So it was like a treat hidden in the book for people to see that he had cursed. So listen, we want people to go get the book. So tell them where to get your book, how to find it, where should they pick it up, and tell us also where to find you.
Yeah, absolutely. So my book right now is located on Amazon and also Barnes and Noble and Books a Million. There where you can order it online. Hopefully we're gonna be in Resist booksellers here soon.
Let's work on
it. You should probably go there first, if anything, to get that there and support Black-owned businesses, especially Black-owned bookstores. And so you can find me mostly on social media is under retro_GT on Twitter and Instagram. I'm on Facebook, but I don't be on it like that, like talking about that's for my church folk and family. Right. But if you always wanted to, yes sir. But if you're looking to reach out for a speaking engagement, facilitation, I do a lot of workshops and then also conversations around my book, topics around mental health, topics around equity, inclusion, Black men and mental health, social justice type stuff. You can go to www.uphold318.com. You can find out all about my business and all about me and my experience and work that I do. And that's really the main contacts where you can find me at. And then also my podcast, The G Taylor Show on Apple Podcasts and Spotify and then your digital streaming platforms. I should be on there, and YouTube, The G Taylor Show as well.
So, he said he's going for his doctorate. He's going for his doctorate of ministry, and he'll be referred to Reverend Dr. G.T. Taylor going forward. So let's put some respect on my man's name.
Pump your brakes on that, sir. I said doctor of social work. That's how I say ministry.
Look, if you like me, at some point throughout your childhood, when you were in church, somebody said he gonna be a minister, he gonna be a pastor. Like, look,
I've heard it.
I ain't hear that from up on high though.
The good Lord didn't tell me that yet. I'm a deacon. I love that. I'm cool right now.
He said, "Follow me and serve," but he ain't saying that capacity. Like,
yeah. I'm serving. That's what I love to do.
Now, the bad part is the moment you say that, you open yourself up. Like, all right, you said you were listening, so here it comes.
Yeah, exactly.
Don't be Jonah.
We'll see. Lord have mercy.
He got him sweating over there. Look, it ain't even hot in his house. He's sweating. Look. Listen. I ain't gonna put no calling on nobody. The calling will come if it comes. But anyway, love the work that you're doing. Love the spaces that you're interacting in. Things that you're trying to do to improve in our community. Love the book. Love the transparency, which I think is really, really helpful. Especially hearing it from somebody that's not, outside of our community. I think it's just going to be more and more impactful that way. So let's work on it. This book that I'm holding up, my mama won this, so I can't even keep this one. So I got to come get another one anyway. My mama won this book in our giveaway last week. So thank you for coming on, Gary. Appreciate you. Tell the missus I was rooting for y'all. I'm glad y'all strong. We want to stay together 18, 20 more years. So keep that going strong. Appreciate you. And we'll see you next time.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate everything you do, man. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Let's see.